I never imagined my life would unravel like this. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of unwavering loyalty, affection, and commitment, reduced to a decaying shadow of what once was, all because of her betrayal. Yet there I stood, looking at the woman I once vowed to love forever. She was on her knees, her face buried in her shaking hands, crying uncontrollably. And all it took to shatter the illusion we built was a single letter. It hadn't happened overnight. The signs had begun to appear months earlier, subtle and easy to dismiss at first. A scent I didn't recognize lingered on her clothes, something floral and unfamiliar. She began staying out later than usual, always with vague excuses. Her phone became practically glued to her hand, its screen always tilted away from my view. I'm not the suspicious type, not someone who jumps to conclusions, but when you've built years of trust with someone, you can sense when that trust starts to erode. I asked her gently at first, "Everything okay?" I said one evening as she walked in much later than expected. She avoided my gaze, forced a smile, and muttered something about being swamped at work. I wanted to believe her. Truly, I did. I told myself I was just overanalyzing things, letting paranoia cloud my thoughts. But then more red flags appeared. Strange phone calls she took in the other room, lingerie she never wore for me before, and a coldness in her touch that felt like rejection wrapped in silence. The final nail came when I saw a hotel charge on our shared credit card statement. A downtown hotel. When I asked her, she barely reacted. "Oh, that? A friend needed a room for the night. I helped her out," she said, eyes fixed on her phone. "Which friend?" I asked. She paused just for a second, but it was enough. That brief hesitation told me everything. Could have lashed out then. I could have shouted, demanded answers, cried. But something inside me urged restraint. A quiet voice said, "Don't react. Not yet." So I waited. As hard as it was, I held my tongue. Even as the distance between us grew unbearable, even as she rolled over in bed and turned her back to me, I watched. I waited. But I wasn't passive. I started paying closer attention, really paying attention. The time she left, the stories she told, the number she constantly messaged when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I might not be a detective, but I'm far from a fool. It didn't take long to find out the truth. His name was Marcus. They worked together. He was tall, charismatic, the kind of man who seemed to command a room effortlessly. I had met him once, briefly, at a company party. He'd smiled, shook my hand like a friend, while sleeping with my wife behind my back. The thought made me sick. With the truth in hand, I could have confronted her. I could have broken down and demanded why. But I didn't want an apology. I didn't want explanations or fake remorse. I wanted her to understand the pain she had caused. I wanted her to feel what betrayal really looks like. So I set a plan in motion. It started with small things. I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. I asked about her day, pretended to care, nodding as she spun more lies. I studied her, watching her fumble through stories and smile with guilt clinging to her lips. I acted calm, even kind, while privately gathering everything. I started keeping records, screenshots of messages, emails she thought were deleted, receipts, times and dates. Eventually, I brought in a private investigator. He followed her during her so-called late nights at work. The images he gave me confirmed everything. Photos of her and Marcus, laughing at dinner, her hand on his chest, their lips locked in the glow of a parking lot light. I collected every piece of evidence. I needed her to know that I didn't just suspect. I knew. I needed her to see how thoroughly I had uncovered the truth she worked so hard to hide. And soon she would. She needed to fully grasp the weight of what she had done, to see the consequences of her betrayal laid out so plainly that denial wasn't an option. The moment arrived sooner than I anticipated. Our 5th wedding anniversary was around the corner, and she suggested we mark the occasion with a quiet dinner at home. I agreed, pretending to be the loving husband she believed I still was. All the while, I was putting the final pieces of my plan into place. The night came. I prepared her favorite dishes, lit candles around the dining room, and poured her wine just the way she liked it. She seemed uneasy, her fingers twitching, her eyes darting around like she sensed something was wrong but couldn't quite name it. I handed her a small box, neatly wrapped with a red ribbon. She looked at me, confused. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Go ahead," I replied gently, my face betraying nothing. Inside, she found a folded piece of paper. Her smile faltered. She unfolded it, expecting a heartfelt note or maybe something romantic. But as her eyes moved across the page, her expression crumbled. It wasn't just a letter. It was everything. A curated collection of screenshots, text messages, photographs, transaction receipts. Evidence stacked on top of evidence, each piece driving the knife deeper. And at the very end, a single line in my handwriting. "I know." She looked up at me, horror spreading across her face. "I can explain," she began, her voice small. "Don't," I said evenly. "There's nothing you can say now that will change anything." She opened her mouth again but couldn't form the words. Her knees gave out beneath her, and she sank to the floor, the paper falling from her hands. Her sobs filled the room. I didn't yell. I didn't weep. I just stood there watching, quietly, my silence 1,000 times heavier than any accusation could have been. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it wasn't for her. It was for the man I used to be, the man who gave everything, who believed in her completely, the man who never thought he'd have to question the loyalty of the person he loved most. When her crying dulled to shallow breaths, I finally spoke. "You made your decision," I said. "Now it's time for me to make mine." The divorce papers were already prepared, lying on the kitchen counter beside the wine glasses, waiting for her signature. But I hadn't stopped there. I had quietly taken steps to secure everything that was mine. Our joint accounts had been frozen. My name had been removed from any of her debts. The house, which I'd purchased before we married, was still legally mine. She'd have to find a new place to stay. And Marcus, he wasn't walking away clean either. He had his own secrets. He was married, too. I made sure his wife saw the same evidence. Her response was swift. She filed for divorce and took their children with her, leaving him to face the wreckage alone. His job? Gone. An anonymous report to HR exposed his inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. Actions have consequences. I told myself it was about justice. Maybe it was. Maybe it was about finally restoring some balance to a world that had tilted so far out of place. Either way, when the chaos settled, when the last conversation ended and the final door closed, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. She tried to contact me afterward, of course. She wanted to apologize, to make amends. She begged for a second chance, promised to be different. But I wasn't the same man who would fall for that again. Some betrayals are too deep. Some damage can't be repaired. The day she walked out for the final time, dragging her suitcase down the steps, I watched from the doorway. I didn't feel heartbreak. I didn't feel hate. I felt free. Life doesn't pause for heartbreak. It keeps moving. Starting over isn't simple, but it's possible. And standing there, finally alone yet no longer broken, I understood something vital. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. Now I could finally begin to reclaim what mattered most: my peace, my future, and myself.